So there are generally 5 types of qualitative research. This course is not going to go incredibly deeply into these, but if you are particularly interested in qualitative research, if you are doing a research proposal or doing research article critiques on qualitative articles, then this section will be particularly relevant to you. A narrative approach is really focused on the whole idea of basically people's stories. One is you're interested in maybe trying to organize people's chronological stories. Maybe you're trying to understand the process of how individuals end up addicted to illegal substances, and you might find that by capturing people's stories, you can actually trace the order of different events that happen or different themes. You can apply this to autobiographies, journals. You can apply this to even different anything basically that tells people stories. And so you're looking at that type of approach. So I gave you a video where you can explore more about that. You also have what is considered phenomenology or a phenomenological approach. That's fun to say. And it's kind of like a narrative approach, but the idea here is that you're not so much looking at organizing events and stories and themes, but you're just really looking at getting an incredibly in-depth understanding of what somebody's experienced and the meaning they apply to that experience. So in phenomenology, then, the meaning that people give to it is really the purpose. You're trying to understand what meaning people give, whereas in the narrative approach, you're really trying to understand the themes and the trends. So keep in mind that even though you may do interviews or focus groups or identify the method in the same way, the purposes of each of these study is different. So I gave you here also a link that you can check out. Case studies some people tend to confuse them with other approaches. Case studies are usually a really in-depth study of a common setting or context. So it's not about one interview, but it's about one system. So maybe that's a policy. Maybe you do a case study on the Affordable Care Act, or maybe you do a case study on a big incident that occurred. One thing to think about, for example, is a lot of the recent focus on police shootings of African American men have led to a lot of case studies where you have one in-depth look that looks at, for example, the shooting of one person, where you might see the interviews with the police officers and with the family members, and you might analyze the policies and the laws in that one city or state, and you might even examine the media outcry and the social media response. So a case study looks at one system, event, context. It's that in-depth look, but you're probably collecting multiple types of information to get the whole story. Then you have grounded theory. And grounded theory is about developing a model. So the purpose of grounded theory is to develop a model to explain how something works. And it could be a social experience, a cultural experience. Think, for example, if you're trying to understand how immigrants or how refugee immigrants acculturate into the United States following a lot of the recent terrorist events that have happened across the world, then you might have a theory that, for example, there's increased stigma or increased controversy given a lot of the political rhetoric. And so you might do some in-depth interviews or focus groups with different refugees or with different everyday American citizens, and at the end of it, analyze the themes to come up with a theory that suggests increased exposure. For example, if that's one of your themes is exposure to media, you might find increased exposure to media increases stigma or prejudice. So again, you'd start off not knowing, you build a theory. And then ethnography is very common in anthropology, is used as well in social work. It's an incredibly in-depth exploration of generally a culture. So you use ethnography when you want to understand a culture, not just from asking people about it, but this is usually participant observation, in that you want to see people and how they do, what they do, where they do it, when they do it, and observing. And you focus on it from both the outsider perspective as well as from what is it like for them. Again, immersion, you're usually with this group for extended periods of time, usually months, if not years. And so here's an example of some ethnography that's done to understand the culture of homelessness and intravenous drug users. So make sure that you recap and understand the different methods for collecting data. You can use multiple types of methods: interviews, conversations, questions interviews, focus groups, and you can do qualitative research for different purposes, like we reviewed in the last few slides of case studies or ethnographies, etc.